some of my books have an homage to my favorite comedian, Buster Keaton. So here he's wearing the pork pie hat, which Buster Keaton wore. And almost all the books I put a pork pie hat in there, which no one ever notices. Look at that. Tortoise and the hare, he's wearing the pork pie hat.
Just one more book, please.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, look what I found, the Zoetrope. You guys ever seen these old-time animation machines?
No.
Okay, so you get you get something like this. Put it on here. John Cheska gave me this a long time ago.
Earliest motion pictures.
That's right. So see, it's all these strips, but when you put them on inside here, then you look through these slats. See them juggling in there?
Yeah.
See if you shot through that slat.
November 13th, 2008. Lane continued to demonstrate his thought process and style decisions he's made in 2 new books he's working on, both due out in 2009. It's becoming clear that there's a lot more to the words and images in a book than meets the eye. It's also becoming clear why illustrators are gravitating to the computer. Though it may not save time, computer software offers a sometimes crippling amount of power and flexibility. To Lane, it's just another tool. I'm Mark Blevis. On this edition of Just One More Book, Lane Smith's creative process unfolds before our eyes.
This is my new book that it was written by Florence Parry Heide, and it's about a little girl who she has a problem. She floats, and she's a princess. So what they do is they have to weight her down with the heaviest crown in all the kingdom, and they had to sew like little rubies and things, really heavy things into her garments, so that she's weighted down, because if they took them off, she'd fly away and you never see her again. Okay, first I start with a white page. And then I will do a drawing like, this is what you guys were asking about. That was my original drawing of Princess Hyacinth. And I was going to do all the artwork in watercolor. But I knew because I was working with the writer and I was working with editors and art directors and designers that they wanted this book to be perfect, so every time I would do a little sketch or something, they would have a bunch of notes on how I should change stuff or what would look better or what would look different. So I knew if I tried to do every painting like this, I'd have to redo the painting 100 times. So I decided I'm going to do it on the computer, and then when they have changes, I could just make them instead of having to redo the artwork every time. But this was my basic design for Princess Hyacinth, and you can see she's floating up. What I usually do is I just start doing little sketches. So that is Princess Hyacinth with a heavy crown. And I would do these drawings. And I would just kind of try to find the look that I liked. And I thought, well, I was very influenced by old playing cards. And I had a book of old playing cards, and they had these figures that were like that with the old cross-hatched lines in them. But everybody looked a little too stiff, like they were posing like this all the time. And I liked aspects of that, but I wanted to make it a little more loosey-goosey. So I kept trying to do little drawings, kind of loosening it up. And the queen, I had different, thought, do I make her skinny? Do I make her chunky? But you can see there's still little elements in there of old trading cards. So then what I finally decided was, instead of doing a stiff style like that, which is still kind of cool but wouldn't work for every page, instead of using pen and ink, I was going to use a paintbrush with ink. And that is kind of the style I came up with. And so that actually is the actual drawing of Princess Hyacinth, which I scanned into the computer. And you can see right here, see, there she is.
So when you scanned it in, you replaced the lower half with the lower half from below?
Yes! Excellent call. You're right. I drew that and I didn't like it, so I redrew it, and then I pasted it. You're right. See, that's one of the advantages to working on the computer, because you have control, and that gives her a little more weight, like she's really dragging that garment. And then what I do is I just start coloring it. So let me see what I got here. I started adding.
Now, this is all digital coloring.
Yep, most of this is. I'll show you in a minute, you'll see.
The red in her cheeks really made her look more upset.
Yeah, she's getting flushed. So I have her colored, and you could see.
And you colored her before you did anything else.
Yes. Oh, I kind of worked back and forth, but mostly I wanted to capture her look. So that's her. But then I started working on the background. Oh yeah. So that is like a watercolor wash, which I scanned in.
So you can prepare your background with all the layers and the varnish and the pebbliness, and then put it in there and use it as a palette?
Yeah, I created all like these cracks. I wanted to get an old crackly, and a lot of times that'll be right on the paint, but in this case I wasn't sure where I was going to put all these crackles. But I painted these cracks on a sheet of oil, and then you use this craquellerie process, and you wait 3 days, and it slowly crackles, and then you have this sheet, and I scanned it into the computer. And these are things I painted in oil. In this case, I got about this far, and I decided that I wanted it to be even more dramatic, so I gave her a big shadow behind her.
Why?
Because it kind of makes her look smaller and more insignificant, like this big shadow. I always wanted her to be kind of small in the pictures. Like,
so that's interesting that you did that, because her shadow wouldn't be there, right?
Yeah.
But our eye doesn't notice that.
that's right. It's a little trick. Unless you had a light source right over here. And then I love the old like Universal horror movies. So I wanted to get that effect of like Frankenstein's castle and some of that. Or like the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty's castle and some of those things. So it's
There's a Flintstones look to it, eh?
Yeah, it does. That's funny because I think I was influenced by Flintstones backgrounds. They used to achieve these kind of textures with a sponge. They would dip a sponge in paint, and they would daub it onto the background. I always love that. And I do it with oil paint and acrylic spray, and mine is probably a little more organic. It's not so much like sponge. It's more like, Still see, even though I decided not to do such a stiff line work, you could still see elements of
Playing cards.
that playing card where even he's got this loosey-goosey drawn line, but this is very
With the squared head and everything.
the squared head and the playing card. So it's just another fun tool. But yeah, see, I'm not even aware of probably my influences, but Maurice Noble, who did backgrounds for a lot of the Chuck Jones things, always used these kind of colorings and this flat background. So it's probably in my brain where I would show it to someone like you, and then you'd say, "Oh, it's like Looney Tunes." Like, oh, yeah, it probably is. It comes out 2009 in the fall. Oh,
It's a full year away.
I know, that's why it breaks your heart. Here's the front cover.
And still floats.
Yeah, and our names will go here. And I drew all these little vines, and Molly gave me the type and then said she needed brackets, so then I had to make brackets, and I decided to combine them with the vines.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a chance that somebody can say they don't like the cover and...
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So,
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, yes, there's a very good chance that someone from a superstore or some marketing person could say, we don't like that. Change that cover. I have this book which is coming out, which is called The Big Elephant in the Room.
Cool.
And this one's got kind of a really fun, simple style for me. It's me being much more simple.
Big elephant in
Yeah.
the room.
And these two guys, see, they've got a problem between them because he says, see, what does he say? He goes, we need to talk about the big elephant in the room. And the one guy says, the big elephant? Oh, I knew you were upset about something, because the big elephant is a term like people use, like, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which means, like, if you thought my hair looked funny, instead of saying, your hair looks funny, you'd say, can we talk about the elephant in the room? What? And you'd say, your haircut, it's stupid. So he's saying, we need to talk about the big elephant in the room. And he's like, what's the big elephant? What is it? Is it because I ate all your ice cream? And he says, no. And he says, is it, they keep going on and on. Is it because I didn't return your video game? Is it because, here's one where he's fixing his computer. Is the big elephant that I fixed your computer? Look, he took it all apart. Is the big elephant that you told me I could go in the pool? So I did. And he didn't go in the pool, he's going in the pool. So I know my mom is going to call me and say, Lane, why did you have to do that? So finally at the end he says, no, I don't care about any of those things. All I was asking you about was the big elephant in the room. And he's like, oh, that big elephant, that's my friend, that's Stanley.
And he's watching Dumbo.
He is. Glad you pointed it out in case any of the Disney lawyers are watching. Oh no, I'm in big trouble.
Who's the author?
A talented young lad named Lane Smith.
Oh, so you did the whole. I was going to say there were no words on that one page, so
Yeah.
I was wondering how do you paint the pictures and know where the words are going to be placed and then which pictures to actually paint? But since you're doing it, you have the inside scoop.
I do, and I would send it to Molly, and she would say, "Move that over to it." Sometimes we make fun of that little ISBN code you have to put on the back of the book. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think it was appropriate for this book, but in the end I ended up putting it in there. So she's dragging a gold bar, a rock, a gold bar, an anvil, and that ugly ISBN code. So, and then here's the ultimate one where Little Red Hen is going, what is this doing here? This is ugly. Who is this ISBN guy? Who will buy this book anyway? Over 50 pages of nonsense and I'm only in 3 of them? That's all the copy John wrote. And then Molly is the designer and she wrote blah, 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 blah. And then she sent it to John and said, I need this. You have to write this many more lines. Like she wanted her to keep on going.
Why did you write blah, 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 blah,
well, just to
blah,
kind
blah,
of
blah, blah,
as a placeholder. Like she could have just wrote, give me 5 inches more. So what she thought John would do would say, who will buy this book anyway? Over 50 pages of nonsense and I'm only in 3 of them. Who are these people? I can't believe it. This is driving me crazy. But instead John just said, oh, I like the blah, 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 blah. He said, just leave it. So that's a good case of how we all collaborate. We're basically lazy.
Why didn't the cow faint?
Because the cow is bigger and he doesn't faint as easily. But he did say you can give someone 2 or 3 stomach aches because cows don't just have one stomach, they have 3 stomachs. You could see just paintbrush. And I tried to get a real thick, loosey-goosey line. Loosey-goosey. And a Bela color. I've been on this crazy schedule. I used to do one book every couple of years, and now I'm like doing 2 or 3 a year. But I'm just so inspired. 10 years ago, I just would automatically tour for any book I had out. But as I get older, it's harder and harder to tour. And also, fortunately for me, the business has changed that I don't know that touring is that crucial anymore because there were so many other things you could do. And what you guys do is really important, and the blogosphere is really important. And I noticed on the last book I did, Madam President, and the one before that, Big Plans, rather than target traditional media like USA Today and People Magazine, it was almost exclusively internet, stuff, just the blogging community, and so I guess that's the world we live in.